feeling of a black cloud over you, just looking at life like everything's fucked, life sucks, and we normalize that sometimes. And I think that rebellion also soon turned into self-destructive behavior, and I was one of those students that was smoking and drinking and sort of getting into a lot of trouble. Almost every person I know has had some level of, whether it's depression, anxiety. It's just human nature to have bouts of, periods of low times. And if I feel like shit, I'm gonna find a person who also feels like shit, and we're gonna make each other feel like shit. And you can't define it as a kid. It's only the years I spent in therapy that I realized that, oh, this is what that was. I think I was looking at another person to make me happy. And that's just never a recipe for success, right? That's a recipe for disaster. My divorce was my turning point in my life. What we don't do enough in India is have tough conversations within our families.
Hey, welcome to Voices in My Head once again. And this is a podcast where your wellness matters. We keep hearing the word wellness, but it's just a cool word for health. And I hate to define health as mental and physical health, two different aspects. But for me, it's the same thing. Wellness, health, mental health, physical health. Don't get confused by these words. Health is health. And that's why I try and bring on interesting people who have stories of their own, who have gone through challenges in their life, and it's learning from their stories and how they got over the challenges and how they are living in the world today. Learning from their the tips and tricks they can share with us, any hacks they can tell us, or just getting inspired by what they've done or what they've experienced. I mean, at least this is the way I have learned to turn my life around. And that's why I'm so happy to have my old friend Sheena Uppal with us here today. I'm quickly going to just tell you some things about Sheena. She went to Woodstock, which we all know is the famous boarding school in the Himalayas. It's rated as one of the highest ranked schools in the world now. Apparently, maybe we can speak about that. Sheena has done her fashion marketing from the London College of Fashion. She moved to Mumbai and spent some time there when there was some trouble in her life, which we'll get into a little later. She then founded a women's fashion brand called Rengé, and she loves fashion. That's her passion. She loves working for street animals, and she's a fitness freak. So we want to learn from her about how she keeps herself fit. And straight away I'm gonna Sheena, people are gonna accuse me of just having. People are going to say that here's a really pretty girl with a successful business, and why is someone like you coming on this podcast? Because your life is perfect, right?
I think everything looks perfect from far away, Yameer, and we've talked about this many times, and I think the truth is we all have had a lot of trials and tribulations in our life, and nobody's life is perfect. So when we spoke about this podcast, I was really excited to be a part of it, because I think it's important for us to sort of be able to be open and honest about our journeys. And in these 35 years, I've experienced everything: ups, downs, great times, bad times, and every single one of those experiences has taught me a lesson and has brought me to where I am today.
So I want to straight away ask you the question about Woodstock, because I've been hearing about Woodstock for forever.
Yeah.
And always, including when anybody mentioned Woodstock, the first thing that even older people like my parents and all, they suddenly, unfortunately, the thing of drugs used to get thrown out, and I don't know why this reputation existed, or I don't know if it still exists. You went to Woodstock. Obviously, these were your formative years, going to a boarding school at such a young age, and experience. And people I know who went to boarding schools, love it. There is this sense of camaraderie and this close knit family, which it becomes because they leave their own families and go to these boarding schools. Woodstock or Dune School is the other famous one. But what is it about Woodstock in particular that why do people associate Woodstock and drugs? Uh,
So I think with Woodstock, it's an international boarding school. So you have people actually and students and teachers from all over the world. And to be fair, I think today that you find a lot of Indian kids and kids in Woodstock from Delhi. But at my time, 20 years ago, I think it was ahead of its time, and we've
oh
spoken
yes,
about this.
yes.
It was a bit of ahead of its time. And the education system was different. You know, our teachers weren't feared. They were like our friends. And I think the thing with Woodstock is the difference between Woodstock and an Indian boarding school. I think Indian boarding schools sometimes can be like those typical Indian parents where so many things would go on in Indian boarding schools, but it's like if we don't acknowledge it, it's not happening. And I think at Woodstock, bad behavior had serious consequences. And I got into trouble a bunch of times in school, and there were some very, very serious consequences for that. So I think that's the difference. I think there was just a freedom of speech and thought in Woodstock, which wasn't as accepted 20 years ago as it is today.
Right.
Anything different, you know, when we were growing up, anything different was scary. And I think Woodstock was just an example of a very free and modern sort of world.
Because I mean, I went to St. Columbus in Delhi.
Right.
You know, we have friends from all schools. You know, my wife's from another school that you know her from. She
Yeah.
went to Modern. Every school has a certain group or a certain individual or individuals doing drugs or
Absolutely.
you know, abusing alcohol or smoking or
Right.
you know whatever it is. I think Woodstock, you think, just gets a you know bad rep or because of the super liberal style that they had back in the day, and
I
you
think
had a lot
so.
of teachers who had come from abroad
Right.
who were trying to implement the American schooling system here.
Well, it essentially was a American sort of missionary boarding school, and like I said, it definitely was a very different style of education than Indian schools. We had rules. It's not like we didn't have rules, but for example, we didn't have a uniform, you
Right.
know, but we couldn't wear sort of tank tops or sleeveless tops. So there were definitely rules, and very strict sort of consequences if rules were broken. I just think that it was a different way of living, and really, I feel so lucky that I had the privilege of growing up in the mountains. And you know, I was really thinking about this the other day. There were people from all over the world, you know, students and teachers, and we kind of came together on a level playing field. Everyone had the same opportunities. Our life was very simple. We'd go to this tiny little bazaar. The only thing that would excite us on weekends was like eating YY and Maggie. So it was really like a world of its own, like its own little country almost, you know. And I really, really feel blessed for that. We had to walk up a mountain to get
Yeah.
to school. I mean, it's
I mean,
so
I keep hearing
absurd, you know.
all the Woodstock people say that famous walk up the
Yeah,
mountain.
come what may, hailstorm, every single one of us. No excuses. Nobody came in a fancy car. You know,
Wow, that's
everyone
great,
had
right?
to walk up to school, and just had to thug it out. And that taught me some of the greatest lessons in my life to really sort of be in an environment that sometimes was uncomfortable, that sometimes was out of our comfort zones. And the thing with boarding school is that you sort of are living with your friends day and night, which sometimes can be very difficult. You know, little kids can be very bitchy. You know, little girls can be mean, so can little boys. And that was sometimes very difficult in school to be bullied, you know, by boys and girls. But really it taught me at least to grow a thick skin, and I really come back to that in my life today. Like some of the best years and some of the most difficult years of my life were in Woodstock.
You're saying thick skin, so I mean that totally makes sense because as you know, typical Indian kids like myself, we were so mollycoddled
Right.
and so overprotected, sheltered that unless you were sent to boarding school, you would never, like I never went to a boarding school.
Right.
I should have been sent maybe. But you learn life skills that you need. But I've always found, and this is the feedback from the people from Woodstock who've been to Woodstock as well, is that the Woodstock ends up churning out like slightly alternate personalities, and in a good way, not necessarily, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but just people who are different. And I think that's refreshing to have different people, especially here where we live in Delhi. Otherwise, it's the cookie cutter, assembly line formula of the same kids, and as you said, fancy cars, and that's what a lot of the Delhi schools have to offer. But I want to come back to what you were saying, that some of the best years, and we know why they will be the best years, but I want to get into the difficult times in school, because and I'm drawing from my own experience here, that the foundations of my problems, I mean, and that's also because of the age that I was at, and I used to go to school then. It's just, it kind of coincided with the school going years, because we're teenagers then. It's, all the issues kind of start or even pre-teens.
Right.
That's when you start, developing issues, and that's when you are, most of the times you're unable to deal with them. You're too young. You don't have the resources to deal with them, and so I just want you to maybe let's start with that in terms of the difficult years in school.
Right.
And
so before I went to Woodstock, I was in a Delhi school, another great school in Shriram, but I don't remember them as the best years of my life. I mean, I had some very good friends, but I always kind of felt like a misfit since I was very young. I think there was a part of me that was rebellious from a very, very young age, and that rebellion sort of used to turn into being a little different. I wasn't a girly girl. I was a total tomboy. I was loud. I was just all over the place, and I sort of kind of just grew up feeling like a misfit, and that sort of rolled into my schooling, the years that I spent in Woodstock. I think that rebellion also soon turned into self-destructive behavior, and I was one of those students that was smoking and drinking and sort of getting into a lot of trouble. And I come from a liberal family. My mom went to Woodstock as well.
Right.
The last couple of years of her high school she spent in Woodstock. My dad is a little more conservative, but a very logical and rational man with strong morals and principles. But I did grow up in a very loving home, and my parents were sort of parenting the same style, all of that. But me as a personality, I still had preteen angst, teen angst, and a lot of that came out in some, sort of self-destructive behavior. And I wasn't one of those kids that was worrying about, what will I do in college, what will I do next. It was all about today, like I'm feeling angry today, or I'm feeling happy today. Emotions were very limited. And I think, parts of that are inherent personalities, hormones, changing hormones. There's just so much going on as a teenager. And, sometimes people ask me like, oh, don't you miss being young and having no responsibilities? I feel like my 30s are the best years of my life, because I don't miss that anxiety and that self-doubt, self-hatred, feeling unworthy. And I think, Yameer, almost every person I know has had some level of, whether it's depression, anxiety. It's just human nature to have bouts of, periods of low times, and
for sure,
it's just how we deal with it. It's how our personalities sort of deal with it. And I, although I had some of the best years, like I said, in Woodstock, I also really wasn't sort of taking care of myself. I was indulging in just drinking too much or smoking, getting caught. My parents were like livid, I come from a Sikh family, so for my dad to find out that I was smoking was like a really big
Yeah,
deal.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was terrible. Those phone calls were like some of the hardest phone calls in my life. So I think it's, sometimes I honestly, to be very honest with you, I think I did go through, and not only in Woodstock, it rolled out into my 20s as well. I went through some sort of depression. I never reached a point where I needed to be medicated for it, but that sort of feeling of a black cloud over you, just looking at life like everything's fucked, life sucks, and we normalize that sometimes. And my mom was very sort of liberal in the way that she was open to therapy always, but I don't think I was necessarily ready at that point in my life. And again, like I mentioned to you, like my parents were liberal, so I don't think you necessarily have to grow up in a shitty environment.
Yeah, I was just
to
gonna
be
yeah, I was
depressed,
just gonna come to that. It's so interesting that you're saying this because everybody thinks that you have to have had you come from a broken home or there's a
Right.
divorce in the family or someone beats you up, you had a shitty childhood because of things that happen at home.
Exactly.
Most of the times that's not the case. You can develop like you're saying, and I think that is so relevant that we stick to we discuss a bit more about the self-destructive personality, because so many of us get into this mode
Yeah.
of this self-destructive personality early on, similarly
Right,
adolescents
absolutely.
or a little earlier before that, and that just stays with us our entire life. You keep doing those things to sabotage yourself. You keep
Absolutely.
trying, you keep attracting those kind of people into your life,
Absolutely.
and you are essentially going to be depressed even if you don't know it, or just going to be unhappy for the rest of your life.
It's so funny you're saying that you attract those kind of people, because there was a time in high school where I was dating this guy who was a year older, and he was like the nicest boy. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why he liked me. I think I felt so wretched. I was like, why is he nice to me? And I actually ended up breaking up with him. And then was sort of dating this other guy who treated me like shit. And I was like,
And you like
this
that.
this feels
God, why
this feels real.
why do people date, why do women date men?
It's
Who
not
treat
only
them?
women. It's not only women though, huh?
And why do men date women? Okay, why do men and women date whoever they do, and especially stay with and stay attracted to the people who treat them like shit?
Because I think inherently,
And you know who I'm talking to here.
because I think inherently we don't feel like we deserve better,
So this is same thing. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's that self-loathing. It's
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
it's that feeling of not being good enough.
And you can't define it as a kid, it's only the years I spent in therapy that I realized that, oh, this is what that was. It's not normal, we normalize these things. Bad boys attracted to bad boys.
So what happened with the bad boy? You dated him for a while?
For a very short period of time.
But
It was very kosher dating, high school dating, but
No. But you, what is it that attracted you? I want to understand. Other than your own state of mind at the time that
Right.
that makes you attract people, or made you get attracted to this kind of a person.
Yeah.
How could that possibly make you happy? I'm just trying to understand I'm trying to dig a little deeper.
Right. But I think, Yameer, when you're in a phase in your life or point in your life where you're not happy yourself, you're not looking out for your own happiness,
Sure.
right? You're sort of mirroring what you're feeling.
Mhm.
So if I feel like shit, I'm going to find a person who also feels like shit. And we're going to make each other
Gonna
feel like shit, So I think it's interesting, just to add to that it's not like happiness that you're searching. You might think you're looking for happiness, but really when you don't learn to feel good about yourself, you're not going to attract the right kind of people into your life. And even the relationships within your own life, whether it's your parents or your siblings, you're not going to be able to give the best of you,
So I just want to mention this. There's this guy I follow called Dandapani. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
He's I learned about affirmations through him. I've written about him a little bit in my book. He said in one of his, something I was following, and he said, people come to me and this is Dandapani, I just got out of this horrible relationship.
Right.
And then I found, the guy of my dreams, or the girl of my dreams, or the person of my dreams. And they ended up being exactly like my ex. And he said, what you're doing wrong is that you still have that energy of that previous person you were with you, and
Right.
and you are, that's why, attracting the same person again and again and again. The same
Right.
kind of person is going to come into your life, so you have to change your energy, and you have to affirm to get the right person for yourself, and that's through affirmation, through various things. So he said there's a reason. Okay, so for a while I also, I dated someone, I was unhappy, then I was just attracting people that were not good for me, and I was not good for them either.
Right. Absolutely. It's
I'm,
a
it's
two-way
not like
street.
I'm a superstar. I made
Yeah.
perhaps a lot of people unhappy,
Right.
and that's because of me too. It was not just them. It was just
Absolutely.
two bad energies together, or two people who didn't suit each other together.
Right.
We were saying, I was asking you whether when did you realize the self-destructive behavior is, or did you realize at all?
I think sometimes self-destructive behavior is also very subtle. I don't think necessarily I'm going around like, hurting people physically, but I'm actually hurting myself. And it's really only when I went to therapy post my divorce that I really started learning things about myself. And I got married not very young. I was 28 when I got married, but if I'm being totally honest with you, my emotional intelligence was of maybe a 15-year-old. And I was married for less than 3 years. That's a short time.
That's when you moved to Bombay?
I was living in Bombay. I married a man in Bombay. And my divorce was not a dramatic, shocking, there was nothing shocking that actually happened that led to our divorce. I married a very nice human being. I want to give myself that much credit that I can choose a good human being. Having said that, I think we both came into the marriage with our own pain and our own suffering and our own baggage. And I mean, I only have authority to speak for myself. And I literally was like a child. I was functioning like a child. And I think I was looking at another person to make me happy. And that's just never a recipe for success, right? That's a recipe for disaster. So I just don't think I went into it with the right sort of frame of mind.
And this was like an arranged marriage?
It wasn't an arranged marriage, but it was a quick marriage. I was, young, and I think my priorities were different. I really didn't understand what I had to look at, look at for a partner. I think different things used to excite me, a lot of glamour and excitement and a lot of fun, And I think today, having done almost 2 years of therapy post my divorce, I think my divorce was my turning point in my life. And I'm really, really grateful for it, Yameer, because I hit rock bottom. And I had two options, I could actually take care of myself. That was through therapy and healing. Or I could continue that stagnant, complacent, unhappy life. And I'm just so thankful that somehow I got myself together and I started going to therapy once a week. I found an amazing therapist. And that's another really, really important thing. I think just doing therapy is not good enough. You need to find a therapist that you can connect with. And I think I learned so much about myself. And the first, I'd say 2-3 months were the hardest months in therapy, because I literally walked in, and my first session, I think I freaked my therapist out, because I sat there and she's like, started talking to me, and I'm like, I'm fine. And I had no emotions to display. And I think what she really, really taught me and brought out in me was that I literally was either happy or I was angry, and there was nothing in between. And I, like a child, I was taught to feel my feelings. I then spent a lot of time in therapy feeling angry, sad, frustrated, so much guilt and shame, because when you go through divorce, it's not just you and the man. And of course, a lot of it is you guys, dreams are crashing. Like, your
Families in India are so entwined.
families are, and family, and my family was super supportive, but of course I could see the pain in
Sure.
them as well, right? It's everyone's pain to share. And I really had to mourn that loss. It was a big loss. Even though you want a divorce, it's still very devastating. It's never
So-
easy.
I just want to step back a second because you've dropped two bombs in the Indian context. The two biggest bombs anyone can
Right.
drop. One is divorce
Yes.
and then is therapy. So that's just.
Absolutely.
I want to talk. Definitely want to talk more about therapy with you. But before that, is in the when you were married and no one just nobody wakes up one day and says I want a divorce or a relationship. People believe that one day is on and the other day is off. It's a process.
Right.
It's like a personality, like anything else. Things start to break down in a relationship between two people.
Right.
So I assume that this took a while, even if it was a few months where you realize and then you just stuck it out because
Yeah.
that's what people do. They try and work it out. They try and be together. They try and talk to each other. They try and see that no, this can't be happening to me. There's a sense
Right.
of denial as well. So did you go through that process
Oh,
pre your
absolutely.
divorce?
Absolutely. And Yameer, nobody wants to get divorced. You don't really
Of
go
course.
into marriage going, hey, in a couple of years, I'm going to be out of here.
Sure.
Um,
I know a few people who do that, but yeah.
okay,
We-
I
we-
didn't do that.
Yeah. I know you didn't do that, of course.
It was
yeah.
very, very devastating, and I think for both of us, it takes two. Like and that's the other thing I really learned in therapy was to take responsibility. I think for a very long time I was blaming.
Sure.
I was like, if he changes this or if he does X, Y, Z, I wasn't really able to look in the mirror and to look at myself and say, I actively made a decision to marry this person. It was my conscious and at that time subconscious, I don't think I was connected to myself or aware of myself, my inner being.
Sure.
So really I had to take responsibility. But coming back to the process of it took a while. It took a long time, and I think we both tried. I think it was painful for both people, but I think we both kind of came to a very common ground and wanted a very amicable divorce with my parents and I know him and his family as well were very clear we wanted to walk away with integrity. That was the most important part of this. I didn't want any drama, because there was a part of me that said, I chose this person, so to flip it around and now sort of have public anger was just not my way of dealing with things. Although of course there was a lot of anger and hatred and
Sure.
shame, guilt,
and people
all of that.
have a field day when two people are. Or I think when people unfortunately have a field day when there's trouble in anybody else's life
Right.
because they want to talk about it. It's their own insecurities, and
Yeah.
it's what the latest gossip is.
Of course.
Oh,
and
you
and
what Sheena's
it's a
got
little
divorced, she's coming
distraction.
back, this is what happened, that's what happened. and
right.
He used to beat her up, she used to beat him up.
Yeah.
Nonsense starts coming out, and
Yeah.
I'm so I'm glad that you've been able to articulate in your things about your divorce or your
Right.
relationship in such a positive manner, because usually it's considered to be something extremely negative. But I think perhaps, as you said, we were speaking about it last week,
Yeah.
that this was one of the best things that happened to you
Absolutely.
because it helped you turn your life around.
And
Just
that's
that,
the thing again,
that headspace that you're talking about, to
Sometimes
be
it's-
able to
Sorry,
take
did you
it to
try
the logical
couples
conclusion.
therapy at all?
we did, but we were just too far gone. I think even my therapist mentioned that this was inevitable, and I'm glad you made this decision.
Right.
And coming back to it, divorce doesn't always have to be dramatic. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be he or she beat, he or
I
she.
just
No, of
agreed
course.
that, in the,
But
in
you
the,
know what
in
I mean?
the-
I think when people asked me, I think some people were just shocked that there wasn't any drama or any shocking revelations.
I think that was thanks to both of you, because you
Right.
didn't allow people to, get into that space, because
Right.
you actually did what you're saying. It was an amicable
And we're
divorce, and you are still friends.
we're friends and with very solid and healthy boundaries. We're not like besties,
Of course, it would make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think it also took a while to get there. There was right after my divorce, while I was doing therapy, there was a while that I felt a lot of anger, and I felt a lot of, hatred, and I needed to feel those things. I needed to get over that, and that is the part, Yameer, when you go through healing, when you acknowledge your pain, what you sort of brought into the marriage as well, the negative things that you were carrying with yourself as well, is when you're actually breaking patterns. That's when you actually learn to say, no, this was not right for me. I actively chose it, but it wasn't right for me. And I would like that the next time I'm in a relationship, that I choose better, or
Sure.
I am better myself.
That's also because there's a learning curve that's happened,
Absolutely.
and in a relationship you've been through the greatest learning curve, which is a marriage.
Absolutely.
I keep discussing this, with my wife, and I keep joking about it as well. And especially in India, I don't know what the issue is, but the ultimate achievement that two people can achieve is get married, and that is ridiculous. I don't know why, because you have people who are highly educated from highly educated families, and their families kind of try and push this idea that all your problems in life, especially for the girls, and I feel so bad for the pressure that girls have to get married at a certain age,
Right.
is all the problems in your life will get sorted or totally get fixed, whatever the
Right.
problems may be. And while that might be the case for some people, what if you married the wrong person? You've ruined the rest of your life,
Right.
unless they have the strength or the just that headspace that you're talking about, to be able to take it to the logical conclusion, try or not, then have the divorce and get out of the divorce. I think the toughest thing is getting out of the divorce,
Right.
in a way that you managed to do, in which you're not best buddies with your ex-husband, but it was a cordial divorce. There was no mudslinging, and it was not as traumatic as what we know as a typical divorce to be.
So, I think the trauma for us was personal. And I think it's, again, if you're mudslinging, you're really in so much pain yourself that you want to inflict that kind of pain on someone else. And there was just no way that, my parents and I were very clear on that. But, coming back to the topic of marriage, there's so much pressure. At least in our time, Yameer, 10 years ago.
No, I think even now.
You think so?
Yeah, I
You
think the
girls in
girls.
their 20s are being pressured?
I don't think girls in their 20s, but I think, let's say, girls closer to about 25, 26, 27. I think a lot. I think it's rare to come across a family that is not pressurizing their daughter to
Right.
get married at a certain, and that's just my experience. I may be wrong, but from the people I know, I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure, and every additional person around you that is getting married is putting that more and more pressure on your parents or on yourself.
Yeah.
And these women are going crazy. It's not their fault. It's because of we live in a system in our country where the family and the parents and all matter a lot, and they absolutely should.
Right.
I'm still dependent on my parents at 34.
Right.
But traumatizing them. I don't think they're realizing the amount of trauma that they are creating, or the anxiety and stress, and they're literally pushing their kids into this depressive state. And I think what that is also doing is putting people or creating an energy that is anyway not going to attract the right kind of person in your life. Arranged marriage, love marriage, doesn't matter.
Yeah. What I also feel what we don't do enough in India is have tough conversations within our families. I have to say that I have been lucky enough that I grew up in a family, especially with my mom, that I was able to talk about anything. and everything. My dad was still a little more conservative, but having said that, there was still so much pressure on marriage, and I think it just flows through every aspect of your society. It's not always just your parents. It's like,
Sure.
your cousin gets married, or
That's what I'm
your
saying,
best
yeah.
friend gets married, and there's just so much pressure on marriage and planning the wedding. My gosh,
Oh my
like
God, yeah.
none of us talk about what it's like after. And you're married. You've been married a while now. You realize it is so much work. It's not
It's a lot of work.
romantic.
No.
It's not roses, coming down from the sky. It's dirty work. It's a lot of hard work. And if you do not have, like you said, that inner strength, and I definitely didn't have that.
I don't think any of us did when we got married.
Yeah, and some of
Something-
us are lucky, that we sort of made it work. But I also find that I'm lucky that I got out of it, very respectfully, and I actually managed to get my life together. I mean, Yami, I cannot explain to you how the past actually 4 years, 3-4 years have just been the most incredible years of my life, because I went through so much therapy. I learned so much about myself, and it's just been life changing. I've gone from a person that used to have a hard time waking up, waking up in the morning and just feeling like a piece of shit, to now waking up early in the morning. I get up, I'm happy, I mean, happiness is a fleeting sort of, feeling. You're happy, it's normal to have your ups and downs, but to sort of have that now joy de vivre, which I never had, I never thought was possible for me. And really, I really just credit it to therapy. I credit it to the support that my parents gave me during my divorce. I think that was just imperative, because if my parents were not rallying, and it wasn't just my parents, it was my family that sort of formed this fortress around me. And I know it's so hard for some women in this country.
I was going to say you had two things. Well, let's just talk about family support for one, because I know that when a divorce is taking place, a lot of times the woman is isolated by her own family,
Absolutely.
by her own family, because there's stigma and oh my god, and
you'll be surprised.
our family's reputation.
Exactly.
This is nonsense.
Yeah.
And today, 2019, 20
Yeah.
almost,
Yeah.
this is rubbish.
Luckily for me, I never came, like, my parents are never the type of people to care about what somebody else thinks. And of course, like, we talked about earlier, there was a lot of pain that they also went through, during my divorce. But there was just so much support that I actually, right after my separation, I was still in Bombay. I decided that I wanted to stay on in Bombay. And I think part of that was also because I didn't want to come back and face the
Sure.
world,
Yeah.
there was just so much shame and guilt in those initial first few months that I needed to process, and I had a small group of friends in Bombay that were just rallying around me. And then I sort of reached a point, I think 6-7 months after I was living alone, that I needed my family. I wanted to be with my family. And my parents were like, whatever you need to do to be okay, we're there for you. And if I did not have that kind of support, Yami, I don't think we would be sitting here
Sure,
today.
sure, I can.
Because like
totally
you said, we're
appreciate
so
that.
dependent on our parents. I am 35, and big part of me is financially dependent on my
Sure.
parents, emotionally, financially. I live with my parents. So we don't really come from those communities where at 18 we are super independent.
Sure.
So really that support, emotional support, was just so important for me.
I think you're extremely lucky to have a family
Absolutely.
like that, and that's
Absolutely.
something that I think you already are. You're going to remember and be grateful for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And how did you so of course you had the family support, and then and I know you're a big proponent of therapy, and how did you take the first step? Because I know that that's what one of the hardest things to do is. And even when you did take the first step, you're saying
Yeah.
you were really in, for the first few weeks you were like, I'm fine, and the moment you go to therapy and say
Yeah.
I'm fine, you are not
You're
fine.
not. You're
Because
absolutely-
nobody is that fine.
Absolutely.
No one's is everyone could use therapy.
Absolutely.
And how did you take the first step?
So, my mom has always been pro therapy. She's very interested in
Your
psychology.
mom is an alien.
My mom
Right?
is a superstar. So, even in my 20s, she was like, if you need therapy, get therapy. But I hadn't found a good therapist. And just before my marriage, actually, I found this particular therapist that I was seeing after. And I think she wanted to do some work with me initially, and I was not ready at that point. So when I did go through my divorce and I moved back, I my
So you went
my
therapy in Delhi then? Not-
in Delhi. No,
not in
my
Bombay.
therapist is in Delhi.
But
She-
not in, you didn't start it while you were living alone in
No,
Bombay. You
no,
came to
I
Delhi
didn't.
and then you,
It's when I moved, I remembered, I said, I remember that therapist, I need to go see her again. And again, my parents were very, supportive. And like I mentioned, the first few months were like, it was like Greek to me. There were just so many things we talked about that I just didn't understand about myself. And I soon realized that I was like completely lost, I had my range of emotions was so limited that, my marriage was going to end in divorce. There was just no other sort of alternative world in that sort of, space. And I was seeing her once a week, and now I've sort of come to a point where I don't see her as often, but I like to check in once in a few months. And like you said, I really feel every single person should have a therapist. You don't need to be crazy, you don't need to be depressed
Exactly,
to have a
yeah.
therapist. You sort of are going to somebody who is a professional, who understands the human mind better than you do, and just helps you, whether it's with work, whether it's your personal relationships. And one of the biggest things that happened for me, Yameer, was, I came back after my divorce. I was 31, 32. I started living with my family again. And, it's not easy to live
Sure.
with adults,
readjusting
and
living.
and I think in my 20s and in my mid-teens, like, I was a bit of a monster, emotional monster. And I think, a lot of girls have sort of issues with their moms, and I
Sure.
went through that phase as well. And I think one of the greatest things that's happened for me is that I've learned to behave like an adult with my parents. And I think they now respect me as an adult. To manage, relationships with 4 adults living under one roof, it's a lot, but it's amazing how far we've all come, and we live in harmony. We like to spend time with each other, of course, couple of days in a month, I'm a bit of a dragon. I think every woman
Everyone's
is,
allowed those. Yeah.
so
Everyone's allowed.
I'll come to the living room and I'll announce that, guys, next few days, bit of a monster. But it's just, I think I am just so much more connected with myself, and I feel a level of contentment that I just never have before. And again, coming to marriage and relationships, I'm single, I'm 35. I do not believe that if I do not find a partner, that my life will end, I'm actually learning at 35 to build my own life. I started a women's wear brand. I actually started Rengé while I was sort of going through my separation. Actually, just before our separation, and my ex-husband was very supportive of my work and all of that. And I've mentioned this to you before. Rengé sort of saved me.
So can you talk about that a bit? And does Rengé come from Namyo Rengé Kyo? Or?
So I got into Buddhism for a while, and that was another part of my life where I found this sort of group of people in Bombay that were just so supportive. And there's really a science to it. It's meditation, it's repeating, sort of chanting, and
So affirmations. At
Exactly,
the core
exactly.
is affirmations.
I don't practice it today, to be very honest with you, but I definitely believe in it, and I support people who do. So I really, when I started Rengé, I started to feel confident. I felt like I could do something, because up until then, like, I had no ambition, I had no direction in my life. I was just completely lost. And
Pre-therapy you started Rengé?
pre-therapy
Okay.
pre-therapy while I was in Bombay. And I I was happy to start it in Bombay because, it's such a great
Sure.
place to start a fashion brand. And when I moved to Delhi, I started manufacturing on my own. So I have a small team, and my sort of work allows me to have an identity, and before that, I remember, in Bombay, like I used to go to parties and I used to be like, if people ask me what I do, I wouldn't know what to say,
Okay.
because I just had nothing going on for myself. I had no ambition, no hobbies, apart from working out, apart from exercise, which has been a part of my life ever since I can remember. Um, so Rengé was also very a big turning point in my life, and just with therapy and with sort of working, it just allowed me to find my own sort of personality, which existed all these years, but I think it just was buried under a lot of self-doubt and, not feeling pretty enough, not smart enough. And a lot of these things are self-inflicted,
Sure,
what I mean?
totally.
And we realize at the end of the day, today, like if I sort of have an issue with somebody, I can still feel more compassion because
Sure.
I understand you are coming from your own pain and your own circumstances. I think when I was younger, I was a lot more reactive. I was less compassionate and understanding.
So, do you think therapy allowed you to expand your kind of emotional footprint? I don't know if that's the right terminology, but
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
have a greater sense of self, which is what
Absolutely.
allowed you to have a greater sense of others.
Oh, absolutely. I think therapy taught me also that it's important to feel your feelings, but you don't have to react to your feelings. Just because you feel angry about a situation, it's okay. It's your right to feel what you need to feel. I think it's also developed my personality in a big way. And the other thing, through therapy, Amir, we've talked about this a lot. I actually quit drinking and smoking 2 years ago.
Okay.
2 years ago, I have no hangovers. 2 years of no hangovers.
Wow, lucky you.
And I mean, I am officially a teetotaler, and I just there was a time in my life where going out to a party and feeling confident meant, oh, let me have a glass of wine or something, and
Glass or 10 or
yeah,
glass or 2?
glass, exactly, glass to 5, and through therapy I realized that alcohol just wasn't working for my personality. I didn't enjoy being hungover. Like even we used to all binge drink, and
Sure.
it's normalized, which it shouldn't be.
Absolutely not,
Alcohol
yeah.
is such a big depressant, and
Absolutely, and especially people who are perhaps like you
Prone
and me,
to it.
predisposed to
Absolutely.
depression or predisposed to
Absolutely.
being anxious. And of course, I'm not a teetotaler, but I hardly drink, so I'm
Right.
almost a teetotaler.
Right.
And the dreaded, I get a 1 week hangover.
Right,
So forget about a 2-day hangover.
exactly.
I am out of commission for days, and that's
Right.
because. And that's when I really cut out alcohol out of my system, because it really started taking a toll. My body was punishing me the next few days. Literally, I was being punished from the inside out. And everybody knows alcohol it's not a stimulant, it's a depressant.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you put Red Bull in
It
it or put
doesn't-
anything in it, or any sort of stimulant drink. It's not
Yeah.
going to help.
Yeah.
And what is increasingly, I guess, people are unaware of is that actually so many of us, friends, family, people around, I'm not even talking about drugs here, they are addicted to alcohol. And if we really get into the definition of an alcoholic, for a long time I used to think the definition of an alcoholic is someone who used to wake up in the morning and start drinking. That is
Oh my
not the
gosh,
case.
Exactly.
Anyone who needs even a drink every day can be defined as an
Absolutely.
alcoholic, because there is a dependence on something.
Yes.
You are, it is, and it's by design, it's addictive in nature. When it goes into your system, it creates a chemical
Exactly.
reaction in your body
Exactly.
and mind, which is why you have to
Yes.
keep going back to it.
You know,
So many of us are alcoholics. We're addicted to alcohol, and it is obviously creating more problems for people predisposed to
Absolutely.
addictions. And I have an addictive personality,
right.
which doesn't mean I'm a
Me too,
superstar.
me
I'm
too.
just trying to define that. I'm not a superstar. Everybody gets addicted to me. It's just I have a tendency to get addicted to things,
Right.
to people, to situations, and I have to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
And just be careful. So that's why I love gambling too much.
Really?
So that's why I have totally cut out gambling from
Yeah.
my life. I don't even dabble in the stock market. That's why,
Yeah.
because anything that gives me that, it
That
releases
high.
a lot of dopamine in my
Exactly.
system.
Right.
So I've gone away from it. So it's a tough call to cut out alcohol, even for someone like myself who loves drinking. I still
Right,
love drinking.
right.
I would love to be drinking a wine or a
Right.
whiskey or whatever right now,
Yeah.
but I'm not. And similar to my sugar is the biggest enemy in my life.
Yeah, sugar is the enemy.
Same thing. If once you cut it out,
Yeah.
you don't crave it anymore.
Absolutely.
So, but if you need to just cut it out or reduce it drastically.
Just like you form bad habits, you can actually form good habits too. And with cutting out alcohol, I realized that I had to learn to be in social settings that made me awkward once in a while. But I really learned to connect with myself. I've learned to entertain myself more and to just be comfortable in my own skin. I think anytime we need a substance, and it could be anything, some people have a shopping addiction. Anytime you need something to fill a void, there's something that's not right there. And you're right, I know so many functioning alcoholics that in ways have their lives together, but have that need to have a drink or smoke a joint, or that constant sort of need for something that gets you
external.
high, and I think that was that you're numbing yourself. At the end of the day, you're numbing yourself. And I learned that even sort of going out partying once in a couple of weeks, or once a week, or once in 2 weeks, and binge drinking, I was numbing myself and then feeling shitty for like the next 5 days, and it just wasn't worth it. And I don't personally enjoy alcohol so much that I just want to have a glass of wine. So I very consciously made a decision 2 years ago that I just didn't want alcohol in my life, and I think it's one of the best decisions I've made for myself.
But while you were even drinking, you were continuing to try and keep yourself physically fit? Or is that something that's carried on for a long time?
So, fitness has been a part of my life ever since I can remember. My mom is super duper fit, and I think there were two things that she really focused on when my brothers and I were growing up. One was she wanted us to learn an instrument, and one was she wanted us to play sports. And, and I see this, Yameer, kids who have been active tend to be active, in their 20s and 30s and so on. It's really hard to pick up a sport or go to the gym for the first time in your 30s. It's not an easy thing to do. So while I was still drinking and partying, etc., it definitely did hamper my sort of lifestyle. And to be honest, in the past 2 years, I feel like I've become so much fitter. And especially since I quit smoking, I feel like my skin is better, my hair is better, I feel younger, and just my endorphins and my high is released when I go and work out, and I'm not necessarily now found a new addiction. It's not
a bad addiction to have. It's one of the better addictions.
For me, it's as much as I like to look a certain way, I like to feel a certain way. And my mornings start with exercise. So, I wake up early, I go and do a workout, whether it's Pilates or yoga. And I think a lot of self-care also involves eating well, right? So I think all of that's improved. Since I quit alcohol, I'm eating better. I don't know how it's related, but
because alcohol makes you crave shitty food.
Right, exactly.
That's
you
because
need
alcohol
to eat a
is
burger.
sugar, and it makes you crave shitty food.
Exactly.
And I didn't know this for years actually, that what a hangover actually is your body craving alcohol.
Right.
That's why hair of the dog, which is the remedy that you start drinking again, that's why it works. Because
so
your body, the symptoms that your body is showing during the hangover is actually your body is what's the word? It's craving the alcohol. There is a it needs that alcohol
Right.
to feel good again.
Yeah. And I see a lot of people, Yameer, that lie to themselves that, oh, I just drink once in a while. But
then once in a while they drink a bottle.
Exactly. So it is you're dependent, and I think we've sort of normalized drinking so much.
Because now it's, now I keep hearing, this I'm dating this guy, I'm dating this girl, or I'm dating this person, and they drink and smoke a bit, but at least they don't do drugs.
Yeah,
and,
oh my
or at least they don't do coke, and that's like the new that's the new benchmark, and we're just stretching that line further and further. And in 5 years it's gonna be, at least they don't do, I don't know, at least they're not dropping acid. He only does cocaine.
Oh my gosh.
Or she only does cocaine.
Yeah.
So, and that's becoming the new normal, and I'm worried about like my own son. What is going to be the benchmark? Like, what is going to excite these people after a while?
Yeah.
There's
but
no
I think
limit.
that's why, like, you sort of have to have other recreational activities, I used to play the piano in high school, and I hated it. I mean, I absolutely hated it because I didn't like my teacher. And last year, I sort of decided that, okay, I need to go back to it.
Wow.
And I have just been having the best time. And this is where I feel like now I sort of fill my time. It's with work, it's with exercise, it's with
it's therapeutic.
It's
and
so
playing an
therapeutic.
instrument is therapeutic for
Yeah,
sure.
it's challenging. You're using different parts of your brain. So I think it's
I want to come back to your fitness regimen, because your skin looks great. You are looking great. So you're doing Pilates and yoga.
Yes.
I don't think we need to really get into the details. Like, yoga is yoga, Pilates is for me assisted yoga.
Yeah.
But what is it that you said, since you quit drinking, you're eating better?
Right.
So, or you're automatically eating better, or is that a conscious, are you very conscious about what you eat?
So,
because we're going to eat after this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to
menu.
eat a massive lunch. So, the thing is, for me, food is it's an emotional experience. I think maybe it's a boarding school thing. I don't know. We have to scramble for food.
Yeah, I've seen that with a lot of boarding school
people.
So
I'm a very emotional eater. When I'm at home, we sort of tend to eat healthy. And when
You're not a vegetarian, though?
I'm not.
Okay, that's fine. That's
I'm
cool.
a very big animal lover, but I'm not vegetarian.
Okay.
And when I'm at home, we tend to eat healthy.
What is that? Now I want you to just define that, because healthy eating
can be
means
anything.
And in India, it's healthy.
I
never got that.
Healthy and healthy.
So what do you eat at home?
So,
I'm just interested to get into that, because I've not done the podcast with a nutritionist, yes, but I think looking the way you are
that's so sweet.
fit enough to guide us. Guide us on what is it that you eat?
I actually had to do a food allergy test last year because I was having some digestion issues, and I realized I'm intolerant to gluten, dairy, and gluten and dairy mostly, and eggs.
Okay.
So I
Gluten,
have
dairy,
not
okay.
fully cut that out of my life, but
And I don't think you should, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's a bad idea. If you're allergic to something, don't fully cut it out, because then you will be severely allergic.
Right. But now, earlier, I used to eat 2 eggs and a toast in the morning. Now, my breakfast is normally a smoothie. So it's fruits, a bunch of fruits and oats. I do a smoothie in the morning. It's quick.
In almond milk or something?
No, with
water.
no dairy. Nothing. Because you're putting an apple, there's a lot of water in that.
So you just dump that into
I dump in 1 apple, 1 banana, a bunch of blueberries, and 2 spoons of oats.
Okay.
Unsweetened oats. And I have that for breakfast, and I'm hungry by 1. I have normally a dal, just a green vegetable and brown rice, and then again I'm hungry by 5, so I eat a fruit again at 5 and some nuts. And I like to eat early.
Yeah,
that's also
great.
Another key, Yameer. Oh my gosh, I cannot deal with people who eat dinner at 10 p.m.
That's why I don't like going out,
I
because
know.
I eat dinner at 7, and then I'm obviously, if I'm going out, you can't go anywhere in Delhi before midnight,
right?
And then you're hungry again,
and then you're eating another meal.
Yeah.
For me, I get so stressed out when people say we need to meet at dinner at 9. For me, that's how will I manage it, you know? So I like to eat by 8 o'clock. It was up to me, I'd eat at 7, but I lived with, you know, three
That's
other
fine. Yeah,
adults.
yeah.
So we eat by 8:15,
So
and
this is all home cooked
it's all homemade.
food, and it's
Yes.
cooked, and I'm really getting into details now. Does it like is it cooked in ghee, or do you know like
No,
are you
we're
using like
quite
olive oil
simple.
or?
Olive oil, olive oil. And let me mention, I mean, I know in the mornings I'm not eating like proper carbs necessarily, but
You're only eating
I-
carbs. What are you saying? You're eating
Full
fruits.
fruit, yeah.
It's only carbs.
but there's a lot of sugar in that
Yeah,
as
that's
well, right?
it's- yeah. That's for
But
another
I'm not
podcast.
eating
Yeah,
like
I
toast
get it.
and you know what I mean, heavier things. But at night also we eat carbs. So normally at night we don't do Indian.
The Indian meals are
All
carb
carb
heavy,
oriented.
and which is
But-
I'm not going to get
But
into
listen,
such
there's
micro
nothing
details.
against that,
No,
because
no,
carbs
no.
work for me. I realized because I work
They
out
are
a lot.
working for you clearly, and this was. And are you eating out a lot? Doesn't seem like it.
So during the week, I tend to sleep really early. So my lifestyle, I'm at home Monday to Friday. You'd find me mostly at home, because I sleep early, I wake up early. If I do eat out on a Friday and Saturday, honestly, I am not thinking about calories. I'm not really that kind of person, and I do have good metabolism. I'm not gonna lie, you know.
Mhm.
I have good metabolism. I work out a lot. So when I do go out, I do tend to be lenient with myself. I'm not so like, careful about what I'm eating. But I still naturally like to eat a fulfilling meal. You know, there'll be carbs, there'll be protein,
But you're
there'll
not
be
really,
fiber.
but you're not really mapping it out.
No,
of
no,
yourself
I
because
never do.
because
I've
I
never
can't do
done
that.
that.
I've not managed to do that till now.
I've never done that. I've never been on a diet. I don't like measure and count. I've just lived a very active lifestyle. I think that is what is a big part of my fitness. It's not the food or the quantity of food I eat, it's the lifestyle that I live, at least for me, for my kind of body. That's
And before I forget, supplementation. Are you taking any supplements?
No, I just take vitamins. I do a fish oil in the morning and a multivitamin, and that is it.
So one fish oil and one.
2 fish oils in the morning and a
That's for
multivitamin.
omega-3.
Yes.
And
your
like a
fatty acids.
general multivitamin.
A general multivitamin. Because
And
I really
and
feel
that's
you
it.
get a lot of your nutrients from food, and I think once a year do a blood test, what's going on with your body, and that's
So
worked for
actually,
me.
that's a thought that had come to me earlier, and then I lost track of it. Is just the way now post 30 everybody says get an executive checkup once a
Right,
year. I
right.
think part of an executive checkup there should be like a mandatory
Mental.
therapy, like a therapy
Sure,
session that is
yeah.
just examining your mental health. And I know it may not be enough one session with a
Right.
therapist for even the therapist to be able to tell you anything,
Right.
but hopefully they have mechanisms now to be able to tell you that do you need more sessions after this, because
Absolutely.
especially the people are going and saying, oh, my life is perfect, there's nothing wrong with me, it's fine, I don't
Right,
need this, let's just
right.
sign the paper and my session is good, I just want to know I don't have
Yeah.
I don't have diabetes, AIDS, cancer, whatever. We've
Yeah,
done the check.
yeah, yeah.
But people don't think about their mental health. So I think that needs to be, for those getting an executive checkup done and you've never got therapy,
Yeah.
please get one mandatory session. Tell them to throw it in as part of your executive checkup or pay $500 extra for
Right.
it, whatever it is.
Right.
I think it will be useful. I'm gonna do the same.
Yeah.
And I ain't even need therapy.
Right. I wish this was also part of just schooling, where you had one class a day that taught you how to really take care of your mental
So
sort of
we
being,
discussed
you
this in this with Zina Zoya in the
Okay.
episode, and then after that Parul Parashil's episode.
Right.
In that also we've discussed there should be mandatory
Mandatory,
counseling sessions that
absolutely.
and totally needs to happen. And if you
Absolutely.
put it into the system from that age, then first you've taken the stigma out of therapy. And secondly,
Exactly.
those kids know that there is this resource for them to be able to use,
Right.
even if after school, even when they're 60 or 70,
Yeah.
100 years old, that they can go to a therapist and I'm having this issue. They can go versus having to, like you had to go post 30. There was, even though your mom was open to it, but that's the first time I'm going to therapy.
Right.
So.
And the thing is, Yameer, therapy actually teaches you tools, contentment and a feeling of fulfillment. There's no magic wand for it. It's it takes work. It takes a lot of sort of hard work to really understand yourself, to understand your darkness. Every human being has their sort of dark sides, and to really learn to embrace your own darkness. That I think that's the biggest sort of tool you can be taught, because once you really start to say, okay, this is who I am, and I accept myself, is when you really are accepting of others. And I think that was one thing really lacking in a lot of my relationships in my 20s, was that I didn't feel good about myself, so I cannot be compassionate, to you.
Wow, I love this chat. And as usual, so far it's a record. I can keep chatting to the person I have here. We can keep chatting forever. But before I ask you for some recommendations for the people listening, for their health and fitness, a specific thing that they can do, I just want you to maybe tell them where they can follow Rengé or follow you. Maybe they want to continue this association with you, because I think it's not easy to do what you're doing, or anyone who comes on the podcast is really opening themselves up and really sharing some very intimate details of their life. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody should do that.
Yeah.
But you have the courage to be able to. It's easy. It's my job is easy. I'm just sitting here, but it's your story, and it's your struggles. But that is what is going to make this podcast successful, if at all, is people are going to get something out of it from your story.
Yeah.
So where can they follow Rengé? Maybe somebody wants to get some nice clothes from Rengé.
Yeah, I'm actually wearing a jacket.
Why aren't you doing men's clothes?
I know, I have so many people saying that to me, but at some point, hopefully at some point.
Soon, let's get you started on that soon. So at
Rengé_India, we're Rengé_India on
that's Instagram,
and we have our own website, www.rengé.co.in.
Can we order from you directly?
Yes, we're
I will
online.
order once you get men's clothes.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure Shinami is already
Shinami is like Rengé woman. #Rengé woman. And
the last thing is, I always like to end the podcast with one thing that I can do, or anyone listening can do, to change their life for the better.
Right.
Now, what can I do now? One thing that you can recommend.
Can I say a couple of things?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what has really, really worked for me? There've been a couple of things. I journal a lot. This is something I started after therapy.
Okay.
And initially it felt like.
Can you just elaborate on that? Because I know what you're saying, but what do you mean by when you say
journal
a lot?
A couple of times a week, well, more than 2 to 4 times a week, I sit with my diary. I write down my thoughts. Sometimes they're just thoughts that are all over the place.
Voices in your head.
Exactly, all the voices in my head. And I've learned now to have the friendlier voice speak to me, and I tend to write down things that are good or bad or whatever I'm feeling, and I don't really put too much thought into it.
Right.
It's just sort of conscious, sort of a flow of words, and I do that. And
is it unconscious as well sometimes?
Sometimes. Yeah. Conscious and unconscious. And I don't necessarily go back and read
unconscious, I'm not even sure that's correct English, but
that's
fine.
Know what I mean. Subconscious.
Yeah.
Subconscious. Yeah. I sort of don't necessarily go back and read what I've written, but it's more like, again, it's a form of therapy. It's a form of connecting with myself, understanding my own feelings. So that's one thing that I've still continued to do till today. And I have like a stack of books that I keep away. Once my sort of diary is done, I put it away and I start a new one. The other thing that I learned to do, which really, really has helped me, is to sort of wake up in the morning and list sort of 3 things that I'm grateful for in my mind. And Yameer, I cannot explain to you and stress enough how important it is to wake up and actually feel gratitude. Because again, it's habit forming, right?
Sure.
Whatever your sort of mental makeup is what you become for the rest of the day. And of course, there are going to be some days where you wake up and you're a little crabby or whatever you're feeling. But it's still important to list 3 things you're grateful for and 3 things you like about yourself, And I think sometimes when you're initially listing things you like about yourself, they could initially be physical. Like, I like my eyes, or I like my nose or whatever, but to try and sort of make a mental note of the three things you like about yourself as a person, and I that's really really helped me have a better relationship with myself. And we've talked about this before. You're actually able to change the chemistry of your brain when
Absolutely.
you sort of wake up with a grateful sort of mind and a
Mm.
grateful heart. And I mean, the truth is, I wouldn't be this badass bitch if I didn't have all the trials and tribulations and the heartache and the pain in my life, So everything has led to this, and I'm just so grateful for all of it. And I just want to say one more thing: the greatest
Go
speech
ahead. Go
by
ahead.
Snoop Dogg.
Right.
I have to
Really?
repeat the greatest
Yeah.
speech when he says, "I want to thank me. I want to thank me for putting in all this hard work, because if you're not your own cheerleader, nobody else is going to.
We don't give it ourselves enough credit, and I think
Exactly.
we beat ourselves up too much.
Exactly. Be kind to yourselves.
This what you're saying is I'm a big self-help reader,
Right.
believer, and the limited reading that I've done in the self-help space, a lot of people talk about gratitude journaling. And that's what is, whether it's in your mind, whether it's in a diary,
Yeah.
in any form, just being grateful, sometimes, which is being
One
alive,
thing.
just being alive, just
Absolutely.
waking up
Absolutely.
alive.
Yeah.
So thank you so much
Aw.
for coming on the podcast, for staying away from the Rengé office on a weekday, and just, I think, sharing your life and having the courage to come and speak about really taboo subjects like divorce and therapy, and destigmatizing them for people, anyone who's listening. I am grateful, and I'm sure we're going to get requests to get you back on, let's say, if we have a season 2 of the podcast. Thank you so much, and we will go, and we want to eat some food now. So thank you for tuning into Voices in My Head. We'll be back with more interesting people like Sheena, and have a good weekend, guys.